You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, let's get after it. It's the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. Nick Alberga and guest host Dave Pagnotta in the chair today. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. What's going on, Dave?
Oh, just another beautiful Monday. It's getting colder. Actually, you know what? The last couple of days have been decent, but decent like that Leafs win last night. Not too bad.
I know, considering how people were feeling after that game against Detroit, then the start against Buffalo on Sunday. It felt like the sky was going to fall on this Monday, but the Leafs rectified things. I should add as well, our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show, hit us with a Super Chat. We got Dave Pagnotta again in the chair today. If you got questions about trades or concerns about the roster right now, get those in. The trade freeze hitting, of course, on December 20th, coming up on Friday. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, Canada's first children's hospital and a top research-intensive children's hospital in Canada, and third in the world. I love the word percolation. Anything percolating out there in Leafs Nation when it comes to trades, in your opinion?
Nothing on the imminent front. Just, the whole like cliche due diligence, looking around, calculating options, blah, 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 blah. It seems pretty clear they'd like to add up the middle. So let's see how the season progresses, who becomes fully available. Guys like I know before, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Brock Nelson as a possibility. If the Islanders are still in the mix, I don't see them moving away from him, but let's see kind of how things progress across the league. And can the Leafs add at the center position? Like that's the data they're collecting right now. Who could be available? Who's available now? Who could be available going into, February, March, salary cap in mind, take the money into account, all that fun stuff. But Tree and company, they're looking, they want to know what's available to them. And if something falls into their lap, they take advantage of that.
It's really fascinating because most years we're talking about like which defenseman are the Leafs going to highlight on the trade market and really go after. And this year it seems like a center seems to be the talk of the conversation, whether it's a top 6 guy, whether it's a top 9 guy. And obviously we talked about some names in the last couple of weeks, but we saw like a rare Saturday morning trade over the weekend where Cam Fowler goes from Anaheim to St. Louis, right?
Yeah. And that was kind of part of the reasoning why Anaheim was willing to take on Jacob Trouba out of New York at full pop. They wanted to have that leader presence on that back end and still be in a position to have somebody there if and when they move out Fowler. It will happen a little quicker than a lot of people anticipated, but he ends up in St. Louis. And Anaheim, retains $2.5 million on that 6.5 annual hit. They've got 2 more retention slots, so that'll be something to watch as the Ducks continue to maneuver their roster. John Gibson, Vetrano, Fabry, McGinn, those are all guys that are expected to be moved at some point this season. And Gibson finally may, be on the move at some point as part of that. But, this was a deal going to St. Louis. The Blues still feel they're fully in this and that they can make a bit of a run here towards the playoffs. We're just about 30 games in. They feel with 50 plus to go that they can still make some noise in that West, at least in the wild card conversation. So add Fowler on the back end. He wanted to change. He's got a little bit of confidence, you would imagine, going in and feeling a little bit better. He's, 8 games now or away from 8 or 9 games away from 1,000 on his career. If he plays every game, the Winter Classic will be game 1,000 for him with the Blues, which is kind of cool.
It was a very Doug Armstrong acquisition, I would say. Cam Fowler coming in and away slots on the top pairing with Colton Parayko, of course, who will represent Canada at the Four Nations coming up. So I was intrigued by that, but it sounds like a lot's, going on around the league. Like it really feels like Judgment Day. And luckily the Leafs are not in this conversation, but I just mentioned it on a daily basis. It teeters back and forth in this market. The Leafs are in really good standing. Like it could be much worse considering you look around this league at the likes of Nashville, Vancouver, the Rangers, and Buffalo specifically right now, right?
Yeah, you're first in the division. Like, I love it. That's a good thing. The sky's not falling. This is good. Yeah, you played like shit for the first 10 minutes against Buffalo, and then you woke up. Who cares? You won. this is it goes to the, I don't want to use the passion phrase, but it goes to the passion and the intensity of the fan base in a market like Toronto, where sometimes you're grasping at things because and forgetting the fact that you're first in the division ahead of the Stanley Cup champs of last year. You mentioned D, like that's part of the reason. This is part of the reason why they went out and signed like 9 different defensemen in the summer to give them depth on that back end. They wanted the stay-at-home guy, you got it with Tanev. They wanted the two-way mobile guy, you got it with OEL. And then you've got some depth pieces, and Hakanpää eventually will be back and provide a little force on that back end. But yeah, up front is where you want to go and where you want to improve. And if Minton or whomever kind of stabilizes the bottom 6, third and fourth line pivot position, then it's kind of the second line that you zero in on. And it gives Toronto the ability to not have to worry about another spot on the team. We can just focus on trying to get a 2C. And some teams will eventually take notice of that, being like that's the only area they want to improve on. And that's probably going to be part of the negotiation factor is they try to maximize a return for one of their guys. But from Toronto's side of things, second, even third line, if you can interchange somebody up and down that roster, because then you get into the playoffs or situational matchups that are going to dictate who's going to play against whom, gives Toronto some options there.
Tell you what, you're a lot more optimistic on Jani Hakanpää and his potential return than I am. Where is the guy? I know he got his knee drained like a week and a half ago. Just they haven't mentioned anything else about it.
Somehow he made Finland for the magical 4 nations.
Our teams, I was going to ask you this too, since I have you. Like, can teams, NHL teams, be like, you're not going, we don't want you to go?
They can suggest it. They can't force anybody not to go. If they do and the player bitches about it, it becomes an NHLPA matter, and it's a big hoopla headache that a lot of guys and teams don't really want to deal with. But they can encourage guys not to go. Like for the Worlds every year, if a guy's like, kind of teetering health-wise and whatnot, a team will, nicely suggest, hey, man, why don't you sit this out and just relax and get ready for next season?
I would just, we're going to say I strongly advise that Austin Matthews do not play for Team USA. Do you think that would fly? Probably not.
I don't know if he'd go for it. It help our chances on this side of the border. Keep another weapon away from those goalies. But there it is.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun tournament. The 4 Nations coming up in a couple months here in early February. But certainly I think it would help Canada if Austin Matthews wasn't in the mix there, but highly unlikely. Should mention as well, supported by Group M Motion Entertainment, we're excited to tell you about the launch of a limited edition 6-episode series with the legendary Stephen Brunt called Up Close. Episode 1 drops tomorrow, Tuesday, December 17th, and it features an extended interview with current MLSE president and CEO, Keith Pelley. This is can't miss stuff, folks. It'll be available on the Up Close podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube too. Here is a sneak peek.
Hi, I'm Stephen Brunt, and welcome to my new podcast, Up Close. I've had the privilege of covering sports for quite a few years, maybe more than I want to admit. Name any event, pretty much anywhere in the world, and I was there watching, live, in the press box. Olympics, World Cups, title fights, Super Bowls, the World Series, and all the rest. The Tyson Holyfield ear bite, Usain Bolt in the starting blocks, Joe Carter touching them all, Ronaldo going AWOL, Zidane headbutt, Tom Brady winning all of those championships, even the '85 Bears. Not to mention sharing an elevator with Donald Trump and a surprise encounter with Nelson Mandela. It's been a great ride. The games, the events, the spectacle can be an amazing experience, but my favorite part of being a sports writer and broadcaster has always been meeting fascinating people and telling their stories. Which brings us to Up Close. Over 6 episodes, I'm going to be sitting down with sports people who really have something to say. Some are athletes, some are coaches, some are from the front office or ownership. The range of sports and subjects is wide, but there is one common element. These are all people that I wanted to talk to, and these are all people I think you'll enjoy hearing from, irrespective of whether you're a diehard fan of their sport. I hope you'll drop in on the conversation. Up Close debuts December 17th, 2024, and you can find it on YouTube or stream it on all podcast platforms.
Looking forward to that. Of course, Up Close with Stephen Brunt dropping tomorrow, episode 1 with Keith Pelly. Should mention as well, the very own Stephen Brunt will drop by tomorrow's edition with Leafs Morning Take. And Jay Rose will be back in the mix. So that's coming up. Looking forward to this series in general. I'm not going to give away who else Stephen sat down with, but the Keith Pelly interesting, the interview, I should say, should be really interesting.
Yeah, give a little bit of extra light into the direction of the organization across the board, how it applies to the Leafs, the Raps, etc. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. I don't think Pelly's done much outside of the combo press conferences. So this should be interesting.
Keith, how do you feel about Brendan Shanahan? He's won 1 series in 10 years. He's your team president.
Yeah, let's see how the playoffs work out. If this team, I don't know. I didn't think Florida was going to be doing this well, so they may be in a little bit of trouble. But let's see how things go and what they add.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I would love a sit down with Keith Pelly just to pick his brain on a few different topics with this organization. But looking forward to that. Stephen Brunt coming up on tomorrow's edition of Leafs Morning Take. Also, join us in Music City from Thursday, March 20th to Sunday, March 23rd, 2025 for the first ever TLN Nation Vacation. From live podcasts, winery tours to taking in the Toronto-Nashville game at Bridgestone Arena. This promises to be the trip of a lifetime. We're offering 2 different packages. One with flights priced at $24.50 plus tax. One without, $12.99 plus tax. Please note that hotel rooms are double occupancy. For more information on how to book, head on over to nationgear.ca or check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations, and that's why Dave Pagnotta is going to join us on this trip, right?
I will be, yes. I'm going to be in Nashville for that one. Any excuse, quite frankly, for me to get to Broadway, the other Broadway, the one in Nashville, I'll take. And I heard some, we talked a little bit about some of the stuff you guys got going on there. That sounds pretty dope.
Yeah, we're fired up. We're not going to reveal a bit too much on the show, but as we get closer and closer to March, we will. And yeah, it's going to be great to have you in the mix. Rosie, Hutz, Zach Phillips, producer Vic. We're going to have a great time with our great loyal listeners and viewers of this program. So make sure to book nationgear.ca where you can do that. Also, again, in support of Sick Kids, get those super chats in at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Dave, let's dive into the weekend's activities for the Maple Leafs. Another split. Why don't we start with the Detroit game? How did you feel overall about that game? Because I had mixed reviews, I think.
Yeah, same. I mean, it wasn't the greatest of efforts, I guess, overall. And, Toronto has for the last several seasons, they get into these trap games where they're playing lesser opponents and they kind of just coast or try to coast, and then it makes them look kind of bad. They've been better this season overall. I mean, the Buffalo game yesterday overall was better. When they played Chicago a couple Mondays ago, that I expected that one to be the trap game, and that they shrugged that one off and were a lot better. The one against Detroit, I don't know, maybe they were thinking too far ahead of themselves with the back-to-backs and whatnot, but Detroit's kind of clawing for their lives as well, just overall. So not overly shocked, but those are the types of games where it's easy to collect a pair of points. And that just kind of stabilizes your positioning up top in the standings, and they just weren't able to pull that one off on Saturday.
The one thing I realized over the weekend is putting things in a perspective, which I try to do, especially in an 82-game slate. You're not going to have it every game. You're not going to be at your best. You're not going to be at your worst every night. But trying to be level-headed about the situation. But the one thing I have noticed in the last week specifically, even dating back to the return of Austin Matthews, this team's a lot looser. Having said that, as we've talked about time and time again, Dave, it's tough to put it together every night and play that tight checking, low scoring, playoff style brand that you want to play every night. It just doesn't work out that way. But that's the one thing I did notice over the weekend, how much more open the Maple Leafs were playing. And with that, defensively, it wasn't their best showing over the weekend.
No, it wasn't. And as the season progresses, again, we're just 31 games in. So as the season kind of moves along, you want to see those types of adjustments being made, where if you're not at your top defensively, we got to step up on the offensive side of things. And defensively means more than just the 6 guys on the blue line. So if things just aren't working that well, maybe enhance or try to enhance the offensive side of things. You add a little bit extra on the transition game on your end versus giving up the odd man chances every now and again. So it's about fine tuning those little elements. But you're right, like the room is a lot looser than it has been in previous years, and that's part of some of these guys and their personalities coming out and everyone kind of clicking really well together, and the other from the guys from last season, and then at the same time it's some of the guys that you bring in and the personalities that are there, and having a guy like Tanev there and OEL and those types of Stolarz and so on that are part of the mix that kind of loosen things up a little bit. You play better when you're more comfortable and confident. Obviously, that plays a factor too. But that confidence kind of comboed with having that kind of loose type of mentality, it works for a lot of teams, and we're seeing it overall work for Toronto in the last little bit.
Always curious to get an outsider's perspective. Should mention as well that you have a pass. You're there at every home game, pretty much. Do you have a sense, a feel of what this team truly is? Do you feel they're different than years past? I know it's constantly a conversation in this market. Is this team different? Can they get the job done in the Stanley Cup playoffs? We won't know until the springtime. But does it have a different feel being around them the way you are?
Yeah, I mean, other than the looseness of some of the personnel, because I've been. Yeah, I've had a season cred with this team for whatever 10 years or so, and if I'm not at a game, I'm usually on the road. So, seeing this team on a regular basis and how they're connecting, and it's just for me, it's more the interaction and how they are with the media at times. Forget about the tough losses and whatnot. Obviously, emotions are gonna kick in, but even practice days and things like that, just the way that they kind of interact with guys like us that have to ask some questions, and sometimes they're not the greatest. So just to see how they respond and how they're doing, and also just how they're doing with some of the other guys. We see guys in the background that we don't see on camera or anything that are kind of chirping or doing something to one of their teammates. It is a little looser. It is more of a more comfortable environment from the sounds of things, from the looks of things. Excuse me. But again, that's brought in by some of the personalities that come there, that have come in. These guys can be nice and loose, but when it's time to get down to business, they know how to be professional too. And that's what Berube kind of instilled in this room from the get-go. You're going to be harder to play against, but you're going to play with a professional mentality. And yes, you can go out there and have fun, but you can do so in a certain way that still abides by whatever, the specific, quote unquote rules are, or the bio of this team moving forward. So it is a little bit different. It is nicer to see when you see those types of environments in locker rooms. Those are usually winning type of mentalities that I've seen over the years with teams like Los Angeles in the early 10, 12 years ago when they won in 12 and 14. Similar type of vibe there. Go out there, get the job done, go do what you got to do, but just don't take away from what the ultimate prize is mentally. And there's a good stability there right now.
Personally, I think they become more predictable in general when it comes game by game, right? Whereas, and not to rag on
That's not
Sheldon
necessarily
Keefe.
a bad thing.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, I think they're predictable in the way I expect them to play, as opposed to the previous,
right.
Iteration of this team where you didn't know what you're going to get on a nightly basis. And I think a lot of that's Craig Berube, right?
Yeah, no, it is 100%. And bringing in that, because now you've got a guy, and this isn't taking away from Sheldon Keefe at all, just a different type of individual. And he's got cup experience. He's won behind the bench. So that already automatically commands a different type of respect. And you're listening a little bit differently and taking in what he's giving you a little bit differently. So that, again, coupled with the personalities in the room, and a lot of these guys are recognizing the fact, a lot of the core guys that have been here for a while, Morgan and Austin, Mitch and Tavares, et cetera, are realizing it's shit or get off the pot time. So, we can screw around and skate around the rink and this, that, and the other and whatnot, and, have some fun with it and play half-assed because we know we're a good team. Or you can go out there and as you said, be predictable in this sense and play with that type of attitude and ruggedness. And, so far it's paying off. Like last night's game, I mean, I chirped the team right away. I said, it was 2-0 in the first few minutes. And I'm going, all right, Buffalo knew it was a 5 p.m. start. I don't think the Leafs did. And it took them a little bit of time, but they got their acts together. After 10 minutes, they started to play a little bit better. Domi gets off the schneid. He scores to get things going. And then second period on, it was just a bigger force from Toronto. And granted, it was the Sabres, but I mean, still, you want to see that type of effort from the Leafs, whether you're playing the 0-10 or 0-7-3, I guess, Buffalo Sabres, or if you're playing the Panthers or, Canes or Vegas or whomever.
I genuinely feel bad for the Buffalo Sabres fans. Like, it's just the same shit year after year after year. And quite frankly, I know they can give it back to us and say, hey, your team doesn't get the job done in the Stanley Cup playoffs. At least we get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, it's an absolute joke where they have like a great stretch of games and they go back to reality, and then they poop away games the way they did on Sunday where they were in firm control. But again, you got to credit the Maple Leafs. They started playing, I think, once the 7 or 8 minute mark of the first period hit. It was all Maple Leafs. You mentioned it, man. Max Domi, you got to feel for the guy. It's been a massive struggle. Ends a 22-game drought, scores his first of the season. He notches his first point since October 21st. I thought in general that McMahon, Domi, Robertson line was outstanding. And I know after the game, Craig Berube gave them props for it too.
Yeah, deservingly so. I mean, those are the types of things that you touched on this a little bit in the Detroit game. Like when you're not having your top guys, excelling, you want to see other guys on the team respond and pick up a little bit of the slack. Now, yes, Tavares got a freaking hat trick, and that's great. But you just want to see, your other units doing well and responding well, because that builds up confidence on them. Like a lot of this game is mental, as we know. And if you have a good game, you want to back that up with another one and another one. It's not going to be friggin' roses the entire time, but you want to play with a little bit of extra jump in your step because you feel like you deserve to based on how you've been performing. So to see that line and all those guys get going last night was a promising thing to see. Again, they may not replicate it the next game, but from a numbers perspective, but just to see them playing better, more consistently, just improves the overall dynamic of your team and your roster overall.
I like the point Vangeli made here in the chat. McMahon has been on a mission since returning. Yeah, I think he's been awesome in a couple games since coming back from injury. And again, this team is starving. They are dying for secondary scoring. And when you can get a bottom six, especially the third line, play the way they did on Sunday, I think you're going to put yourself obviously in a really good position to win. But the dynamics of that line are really intriguing, especially when you have Max Domi up the middle again. Like it really felt like that conversation was over, specifically with Fraser Minton being recalled. Having said that, I think it was the right decision to sit Minton for a game. The last couple, he hasn't been as strong. And again, it just speaks to the depth, having the ability to have these guys come in and out of the lineup here too.
Yeah, and a bit of a reminder too, like, hey, buddy, yeah, you're in the show now, but you need to bring it game after game. You can have an off day here and there, but you start putting those strings together. All right, get your ass up in the press box and then regroup a little bit. It's an eye opener for some of these younger guys that feel like they're playing well, and sometimes you just need a reminder. Like Philly when Torts benched Mishkov. Now, different situation, but scratched him from the lineup to give him a different perspective. Take a look at the game from a bird's eye view. You're still learning. Let's see if you can focus in on other areas of this team and the system and play better. And it worked out for him. There's a similar situation here, just from the overall idea of why you're scratching a guy that's this young. You want to give him a different perspective. Plus, sometimes you just want to give him a nice kick in the ass.
At the Leafs Nation 401, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and I think you're so right on that front. But I think long-term, we can both agree that Max Domi's not going to be the 3C, right? I know he had a good game on Sunday, and that line had some considerable chemistry with McMahon and Robertson, but it seems to be the same song and dance early on here with, I guess, Craig Berube specifically is positioning, Domi at center where he's better suited for the wing. And I think it just speaks greater volumes to the need for a center at some point via trade, no?
It does, but, in these, like, situational positioning, right? Like, you're playing Buffalo. You want to build up Max's confidence, try to get him going. Clearly it worked. So throw him and it's opportunistic too. You want to send a message to Minton. You want to get Max going a little bit. It kind of worked out. So, yes, as we talked about early on, they're going to go after a center. They're probably going to add one. To what degree and to what caliber, we got to wait and see. It depends what becomes available, and more likely, my guess would be after Four Nations. But again, if something falls into Tree's lap, he'll take it. But right now, if you can interchange guys up and down the lineup, if you can build a guy's confidence a little bit, get him going, and send some appropriate messages, I mean, I'm all for it. And Berube's not afraid to do it. And if for whatever reason you feel the need to bitch and complain, either privately or publicly, he'll sit down and talk to you about it. But he's gonna tell it like it is. And I think in this type of situation, you're playing a much lesser opponent on a back-to-back. Let's see what Max can do back up the middle. Can he build a little bit off this? And it worked.
It is so interesting when you think about, Dave, where this team started this season in terms of the conversation up the middle to where they're at now, where like John Tavares entering the year was like doom and gloom. This guy's finished. He's getting $4 million per season on his potential extension. And ditto, same old John Tavares season, averaging about a point per game. He gets his 5th Hattie as a Leaf, 13th career. He's currently on pace for 41 goals, 76 points. What's happening here, Dave?
He's not done. I mean, shit. I don't know. I don't understand why everybody wrote this guy off. Like, okay, maybe he's not the best up the middle anymore, but the guy can still produce. And all of this $4 or $5 million talk on a new deal, I don't know where the hell that's been coming from. Because he's not signing for that. Especially if he puts up 35 to 40 goals this year and is in the 70 to 80 point realm. That's second line material. So, and the first on some teams. So this is a $8 million player, probably. Might not be what everybody wants to hear, but if you want to keep him, you're probably looking at that 7, 8, depending on term. Like the start of the season, I figured he'd probably end up with something in the 3x7 range. Something like that. He may be making an argument to be a little higher than that, but the cap's going up, and you're going to have space. And if he doesn't get it here, he can explore options somewhere else. But the way that Tavares is playing is, yes, it's prototypical 91 right now, but are you going to not be happy about a 35 to 40 goal scorer and a near point a game player? I mean, I would take that for a team, and we touched on it, for a team that needs the secondary scoring to kind of contribute. Well, great. This is what you need. You need other pieces too, obviously, but you need these kinds of guys, so you don't have to exclusively rely on Austin and Mitch and Nyes up on the top line. You can go back to this unit with Willie and with Tavares. So this is all a good thing. And again, if you can find somebody up the middle to play with him, so you can slot him on the left side, awesome. That's a good thing. Worst case, maybe if they really want to bring in and somebody falls into their lap in terms of a top 6 guy, a secondary threat on the wing, you have to weigh those types of options to throw him on the left side and keep Tavares up the middle for the duration of the season. But look, the way that Tavares has been playing, and it feels like he's playing with a little bit of, less weight on his shoulders. And maybe that's because of the captaincy, that it's no longer his burden and he doesn't have to deal with the media on a daily freaking basis. But whatever it is, it's working for him. And for his sake, I hope he keeps it up. And for the Leafs' sake, they need him to keep it up.
I don't buy that captaincy BS. Like, I've been to a bunch of games this year. John Tavares talks to the media every game. Like, every time I'm there, he's doing scrums. Like, I think he's doing exactly what John Tavares has done his entire career. And that's why I love this guy. That's why I liked him as captain. He doesn't get too high. He doesn't get too low. Like, he is the epitome of a professional. And every time you count him out, he rises to the occasion. That's exactly what we're seeing. Having said that, I don't know if you feel the same way. I'm in no rush to give this guy an extension. Ditto for Mitch Marner. We've had this conversation before. Honestly, like, he could put up 60 goals this year. If this team doesn't push through in the Stanley Cup playoffs, again, I think it would be insane to come back and roll it back with these guys. I just think we're at a point. You mentioned the reference earlier on the year, in the show. Get the job done. Great. If you don't, then I think you got to make seismic changes. Maybe it's not re-signing a Tavares. Maybe it's not re-signing a Marner. But I will stand on that ground regardless of the pace these guys are on. It can't be the same old song and dance if let's say they lose in the first round again,
Yeah, and overall, I mean, I agree with you. Toronto's the problem that they're faced with in that situation is, well, who the hell are we going to get to bring in to replace these guys? Like, if Mikko Rantanen is available and he's going to July 1, he's going to July 1, different discussion. You go all in for him. and you're probably looking at, if he hits the open market, he's 14 mil, maybe a little bit more, depending on how trigger happy some of these GMs get. If he doesn't stay in Colorado, and he wants some big bucks. I think based on some of the numbers along the way, like McKinnon's first year of his new contract that kicked in last season was just around 15% of the salary cap. Draisaitl's deal that kicks in next year is 1% of the 15% of the proposed salary cap, or the anticipated cap of $92.5 million. So you're looking at roughly similar numbers there for Mikko Rantanen in his deal, and the cap's going to go up. We're probably going to be around 95, is my guess, as they try to bridge the gap before having an explosion in a couple of years. So if you know you can replace a Marner or a Tavares with a specific player that's going to be available, then you do it. But that's the challenge. It's a risk. Can you keep Tavares at $5 million? You sign that all freaking day. I just don't think that's realistic. So you kind of have to weigh things out. Okay, you get bounced in the first round again. Even if you get bounced in the second round, and these guys just aren't getting it done, is it the complementary pieces you got to bring in? Or do you say goodbye to one guy and try to fill the void by bringing in two specific players? It's almost a catch-22 based on the availability of other guys. And quite frankly, GMs around the National Hockey League aren't the most aggressive overall. And I look to Vegas. Like, Vegas doesn't give a shit. They're just going to give out assets and deal picks. And they tell us, hey, we pay a lot because we can afford to pay a lot based on the fact that we want to compete every year and go after a championship. So if you're coughing up a little bit extra and you're winning, who gives a shit, right? So you gotta weigh the good with the bad. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Blah blah blah. All those fucking puns and expressions. Excuse me. And then just kind of go from there. But the Leafs have to determine when it's the right time for them to squeeze. And is it now? I think they got a good group, so maybe. But if it doesn't work out this season, then you got a whole other can of worms you got to unravel here, or open, or whatever the hell the expression is.
Yeah, close enough. Cap is king, though. Like, I think my bigger gripe is like not getting caught with your pants down when it came to negotiations last time. And not to say that I'm against coming back with these guys, but I think at the right price, obviously you have to think about it. More so in the case, in my opinion, at least, in John Tavares. If the price makes sense, then hell yeah, I want the guy back. I know Mitch Marner, and all the power to him, is going to chase the money. He's going to want proper market value, or whatever you like to term it. Like, he's going to look for the right deal that makes sense, comparatively speaking, to other players around the league. That's just the way it works. But I just think, it's one of those things where you have to be smart about your allocation cap-wise. Just because the cap's going up doesn't mean, hey, I got to give this guy 14 mil. I got to give this guy $8.5, $9 million per season. And that's why I just want them to be very, very smart, because I understand that part of the conversation. You lose these guys, how do you replace them? But I still think back to cap being king in this league. You look at how many teams and contenders specifically would love to have cap space. The Maple Leafs have been in cap hell for the last 10 years. Imagine they had 4, 5, 6, 7 million available to them to swindle a deal where there's a team that just needs to get a player off their roster, and Toronto can swoop in and be like, hey, I'll take that guy. I'll give you a draft pick or whatever, and I have the cap space to make it work. That's just, I'm thinking outside the box. At least I'm trying to.
Well, let me ask you this, hypothetical: 13 million for Mitch, 14 million for Rantanen, or neither?
I think Mikko Rantanen's a way better player than Mitch Marner. I know you're not going to want to hear that. The guy's won a Stanley Cup. He's got the pedigree.
I agree with you.
He's rode shotgun with Nathan McKinnon. Yeah, I'd be more comfortable paying Rantanen 14 than it'd be, paying Mitch Marner 13. And it's more so, I just think you need a changeup. Like, if it doesn't work again, you're going to come back with the same guys who have failed and failed and failed. I just don't know how I feel about that. But honestly, it'll be so intriguing. If you're asking me right now, which you are, I think there's a strong likelihood that at least one of those two guys, in Tavares and Marner, are back, if not both, right?
Likelihood? I mean, I think there's more. I mean, I agree with you with respect to Mitch in terms of going after the money. I think he wants to stay here. Like, I'm going to go to him and say,
Here, Dave, we're just going to have you reconnect here. We're just losing a bit of connection with you. So, Nick Alberga, Dave Pagnotta, the Monday edition here of Leafs Morning Take. I think we got DP back in the mix here. If you just want to finish off, your thoughts on all that. We still don't have Dave. We're going to try to get Dave back in the mix here. But we're just talking about John Tavares and Mitch Marner. The same old conversation, but that to me was the big story from Sunday's win against Buffalo. John Tavares was electric. He was outstanding. Great tip on the Austin Matthews point shot on the power play. The Barry in the slot there to score the empty netter as well. This guy's just trucking right along. Again, at a 41-goal pace this season, 76 points. Max Domi 1-1 in the game. That's great to see back at center. And obviously a guy like Fraser Minton, healthy scratch for that game. But there's nothing wrong with that. In the grand scheme of a long season, I think you're going to have to make calls like that. So we'll see on that front. Dave, I believe we have you back here. Dave, you back in the mix here?
I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure what the hell happened there, but
yeah, it's all good. Go ahead.
Yep, you got me.
Yeah, we got you. What was your thoughts?
I'm not sure what happened there. I think. Yeah, I mean, I think there's more of a likelihood of just to sum it up, Tavares taking in the 7 range, 6 round versus giving Mitch 12 million, for example. I think he's going to be looking for more than that.
That makes sense. Okay, Dave, if we could just try to reconnect one more time. We're just having some connection issues here, but nevertheless, we roll on. The Maple Leafs 6-3-0 and 9 outings without Austin Matthews in the lineup. And the big thing I wanted to get to on today's show, too, that's not really getting enough praise is the Maple Leafs on home ice this season. I often joked about it. As you guys know, I did 2 seasons as Maple Leafs radio host alongside the great Gord Stellick. And Gord constantly brought up the fact that the Maple Leafs had to find a way to make Scotiabank Arena a house of pain. I'm not saying it's at that level just yet, but to win 14 out of 18 at Scotiabank Arena is a really good start. Now, I'm curious to see how this looks in terms of home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Maple Leafs have had that before and not been able to execute, but I'd rather have like a Game 7 potentially on home ice than on the road. So I think, I had to state that and highlight that on today's show, just the fact that this Maple Leafs team, specifically on home ice at Scotiabank Arena, has been a great story and a pleasant story at that. And if you recall, even looking back at last year, their road record was really, really good, and they were not so great on home ice. So it seems to have flipped a bit this season. But Dave, I believe we have you back. I love what I'm seeing for the Maple Leafs on home ice. Any reason why? Is it last change? Is it Craig Berube? It's just one of those things that's happening this season.
Yeah, it's a nice little change of events here to have consistency, consistent winning anyway at home, just an extra confidence booster as well. It's hard to pinpoint. Maybe it's just a comfort thing that we're home again and we can go at our own pace and sleep in our own beds or whatnot, whatever the hell it is. That seems to be working, because it's definitely not the crowd, as we've talked about a number of times. It would be nice to see a little bit more, kind of out of that. But for whatever the reason, it's just working on home ice. So yeah, I can't pinpoint it. And other than just a comfortability kind of vibe from some of these guys, at least that's what they seem to be saying.
Moving the conversation here, Dave, to Anthony Stolarz. I, for one, probably expected him back for the Wednesday game against Dallas. It's not going to happen. He's eligible to return. It's retroactive on Friday in Buffalo. But I'll tell you right now, my level of concern will go way up there if we don't see Stolarz this coming weekend. I don't know if you feel the same way, because it was something that was perceived as day-to-day, but next thing you know, it's going to be like a week, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like you hope to see him back at some point this week. Like, I would put him back against the Islanders, quite frankly, on Saturday. I'd like to see him face off against them. Give him a little extra time. No need to go into Buffalo and play in that one. There's enough of a gap. You play Wall in Dallas and then on Friday in Buffalo, and then give Stolarz the home start on Saturday. That's kind of how I would play it. I don't think they've made a determination there yet. But if he is back, if he's healthy and ready to roll come Friday, Saturday, I would throw him against the Isles more so than anything. They've got a whole bunch of other issues to deal with. But at the same time, there's a little bit of extra competitiveness and fierce in that roster. And you don't want to just, give a layup necessarily to a guy like Stolarz who's feeding off of the competition. I'd give him a little bit harder competition. If I have to choose between the Sabres and Isles, the Isles are the better team. I'd rather throw him out there.
They're not really saying much though. That's what concerns me, where it's like it's day to day, and then next thing you know, he's on IR, and like it just that is in the big scheme of things, like that's what worries me. Is like, would I be shocked if Friday hits and there's still no Stolarz on the ice? Probably not. Are you hearing anything differently on what's going on here?
I haven't. They seem to be suggesting that it's fine and that he's on the proper trajectory. I don't expect him to end up in Germany to seeing a specialist at any time soon. 3 weeks later, I don't think it's nearly the same situation. I think this is more of, you just want to monitor the guy. You don't have to rush him because how well your goaltending has been doing overall. And even though Wall didn't get the start yesterday, the entire team has all the confidence in the world in both of these guys. So throw them out there Wednesday against the Stars in Dallas, throw them out there in Buffalo on Friday. And then if Stolarz is good to go, which he should be, throw him out there against the Islanders on Saturday. They play the Isles like 9 times in 2 weeks, it appears. So I don't know. Like, I think it was the last season too, where it was the Islanders and Leafs, and they had like all their games, all 4 like matched up against each other, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. The NHL schedule, I'm done asking questions about that because from what I hear, it's just so difficult to put it together. But yeah, there's some weird abnormalities with the schedule. Even talking to Sheldon Keefe last week, he was talking about how they played Washington 4 times in the first like 25 games of the season, and they're finished with them. And it's like, we're not even at Christmas,
Right.
But that's just the way the schedule works. I'm chuckling here in the chat. There's a Joshua Disatel. Apologies if I mispronounced your last name, but talking about potential trade rumors. And some of these trades that he's putting out there, it's like, yeah, like he I guess some guy in his basement said the Leafs are close to getting Frankie Vatrano from Anaheim. And now Josh is also saying there's a rumor that Hakanpää is going to the Blue Jackets for a 4th in 2026. Like, where does this shit come from, man? It's just insanity to me sometimes.
I don't know if either people are just making it up or people are spitballing and trying to connect dots or something like that. Like moving Hakanpää to Columbus, what sense does that make for the Jackets? First of all, Vatrano, I mean, he'd be somebody that I would look at, and I think the Leafs did last season a little bit. But I mean, what are you giving up for Frank Vatrano at this point? The way that he's been playing in Anaheim, he hasn't been playing at the same pace he did last season, and you have to figure out where you want to utilize your cap space. Do you want to get a winger or do you want to get a center? That's kind of what they have to prioritize here. If they feel Tavares can stay up the middle, just with more support on the wing, on the left side with Willie, then okay, cool, go get a winger. Otherwise, wait for the possibility of adding up the middle. I haven't heard much on that front, quite frankly. It's not to say it couldn't happen. It's just not something I've been keeping tabs on.
I still want an inquest on why Willie Nylander up the middle only lasts like 2 games a season, where it's like they come in gung-ho in training camp. Nylander's going to play center. He barely plays center. The last we hear of it. And then on top of that, why haven't they ever tried Mitch Marner at center? Like, I just have a lot of questions for some people.
No.
Why? Why not?
Dude, come on.
Why not?
He would get destroyed up the middle. Forget defensively. The defensive component's a different side of things. Just he doesn't have the physicality or the overall strength, quite frankly, to endure a full game going back and forth up the middle. He's solid. He's underrated defensively, I think, from a league perspective, but it works for him on the PK because that's a different kind of beast that you're dealing with. And yes, he's got the vision, and yes, he's got the playmaking skills, but no, keep him on the right side, please.
Effectively, what you just told me is that Willie Nylander is a better all-around player than Mitch Marner.
Willie should stay on the wing as well. And I think I think it was pretty damn obvious because of exactly like, okay, cool, training camp, we're going to try him. And then a couple games in, let's go back to the wing, buddy. No, keep both of those guys on the right side. You're good on that side. You've got Austin up the middle. Knies is working on that top unit. Either find a left wing or find a center and move Tavares to the left for the second line. Let's get real here.
That's a chicken shit answer if I've ever heard one. At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today, NATION. The one game I'm looking at tonight, the Stanley Cup final rematch, Florida on the road, visiting the Edmonton Oilers, who have won 5 in a row, 8 of the last 9. I'm going to take a flyer on the road dog. That's the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers coming off a 3-0 loss in Calgary. Give me the Panthers money line in that game, Dave. Anything specifically you're looking at tonight?
There's a little bit of panic just because Vancouver loves to panic all the time, worse than here. And they've been on a bit of a up and down little roller coaster ride here. So with that in mind, they play Colorado. McKinnon's leading the league in scoring. I'm going for 2 points on McKinnon for tonight's game against Vancouver. I'm going to take the Avs on the money line as well, but I'm going in that direction. At least 2 points for the Nate Dog.
Sounds good. Great job, Dave. Of course, the Maple Leafs not in action until Wednesday when they visit the Dallas Stars, but appreciate your time today, man. Happy holidays.
You too, buddy.
There you have it. Dave Pagnotta for the fourth period. You can check him out over the NHL Network, NHL Network Radio. You guys got the Hot Stove on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio as well. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys were fantastic. At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. So again, Jay Rosehill back in the mix, back from his Austin hiatus. We're going to get some feedback and a recap on his trip to Austin over the weekend, that's for sure. And a couple of nice big guests coming up tomorrow. We mentioned Stephen Brunt to break down up close his new 6-part series coming up. And Brad May, former Toronto Maple Leaf, former Buffalo Sabre, among other squads, will drop by the show, and former teammate of Jay Rosehill. So that's always fun when we get former teammates on the show. Many thanks to producer Vic. For Dave Pagnotta, I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk tomorrow. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.